What is something scary that has happened to you that you cannot explain rationally? Story 1. I live in a condominium and we own 2 apartments on the 7th and 8th floor. The only way to move in between them is to step out of the apartment, take the elevator or the staircase, and enter the other one. One night, we ran out of ice cream upstairs and my mom told me to go get some from the downstairs freezer, so I took the keys to the 7th floor's apartment, and since it was dinner time, no one was there. I walked into the pitch dark and realized that someone was sitting on the sofa, so I flipped the switch to see my dad just sitting there. It was kind of weird, but I just went to get the ice cream and asked if he had a key to lock up. No answer. I shrugged and thought, well, if he came in and locked the door behind him, he must have one. Went back upstairs and my dad was sitting there eating dinner. I freaked out and asked how the heck did he get up here so fast, and everyone told me that he's been here all this time. Told them it wasn't possible because I just saw him downstairs, but no one believed me. Now I never go down there alone. Edit. To clear up some stuff, each our apartment doors are fitted with 3 types of locks. There's a gate which has its own keyhole and lock. We put another lock in it, so you have to unlock this gate twice. Then there's the door and its own lock. So you need 3 keys just to enter our house if no one is inside. I did get a good look at, and it was 100 my father. He's kinda fat and has this serious-looking face, so it's kinda hard to mistake him. The apartments are not accessible because not only are they not on the same floor, they aren't even located on top of each other. There's an elevator in between them, and they are on different floors. Story 2. I was home alone for a weekend a few years ago while I was still in high school. After school one day, I was driving home, and when I passed in front of my house, I thought I saw some old lady in white clothes in my sister's room looking through the window. I thought it was stupid, so I went in the room to check out what it actually was, but I couldn't find anything. I pretty much forgot about it until later that night I got a call from a very panicked and scared neighbor saying there was some old lady pacing back and forth in my sister's room. I still have no idea what it was, and I've never seen anything like it since. Answer. My mother's house has a back door that goes directly from the back porch into the kitchen. The door has a large glass window in it that is uncovered. One day, I was going over to her house, and when I pulled up in the back, I very clearly saw a white-haired elderly lady standing in the window of that door, smiling. I assumed she was someone visiting my mother. I looked down to grab my purse and keys, and when I looked back up, she was gone. But I didn't think anything of it. Got out of the car and walked to the back door, looking in the front driveway as I went to see if there was an unfamiliar car there, but it was empty. When I walked inside, my mother came from the front of the house back to the kitchen, and I asked her who was visiting. She looked at me like I was crazy and said no one was there. I know what I saw. I even remember the color of her blouse. Story 3. I used to work doing maintenance at historic properties. There was a historic house museum I worked at when it wasn't open to the public. It was part of a whole landmark site. There was a visitors center with offices, and then the house was about half a mile up a dirt road in a wooded area. Sometimes I worked with a crew, but there were a lot of times I was there alone. One winter day, when it was really cloudy and dark, I was working alone to get ready to replace some electric work on the exterior of the house. I went inside and turned off the circuit to the whole property, and I tested it. It was off. I locked the doors and went outside to work. After about an hour, I got down from my ladder and started walking around the house. And then one of the lights inside the house turned on. I started to freak out, but thought that maybe someone was playing a joke on me. I called the visitors center on my walkie-talkie and confirmed that the only other person who was working that day was still there and hadn't left, and that all the keys to the house were present and accounted for. That's when I freaked out and ran the half mile up to the office. I made my coworker come back with me to check out what was going on, but when we got to the house, the light was off again, but the bulb was still warm. All the doors were still locked and the circuit was still off. Still gives me shivers to this day. TLDR. Light turns on by itself in old house when the electricity is off, which is literally impossible and super spooky. Story 4. He was also an outdoor cat, so he would often spend most days outside and then come in for the night. One night, Buster didn't come back in the house. We usually fed him at night, so I was worried. Our area was also well known for an abundance of coyotes. My parents were being a bit hush-hush about Buster's disappearance, but I didn't get the hint. That night, when I was drifting off to sleep, Buster jumped onto my bed. He lay down by my head and let me pet him until I fell asleep. Honestly, I was shocked because he had never done this before. The next morning, I triumphantly walked downstairs and related to my parents that Buster now loved me because he slept in my bed during the night. My parents looked at me inquisitively and sat me down at the breakfast table to let me know that while they were outside the night before, they had found Buster's body in the alley behind our house. They thought he had been harassed by a coyote, but he was dead, so he couldn't have slept in my bed that night. To this day, I like to think that Buster just wanted to say goodbye and thank me for trying to love him in the only way a child knew how. Story 5. My family owns a decent-sized horse boarding facility, and when we first had it going, we used to do bed check as a family. Bed check is just making sure all the lights and fans were off, as well as looking at the horses for injuries, and if they had blankets during the winter. Well, we had just got back from eating out, and it was a moonless night during fall. As we stepped out of the truck, this large light gray mass stood up and took off, loping towards our pastures. It was about the size of a single cab pickup truck. It made no noises other than it hitting the ground as it ran. The only other proof that it was real to us was the horses that were turned out. That night screamed and stampeded across the pasture it had jumped into. We did a double count of all the horses that night, and not a single one was missing. I still have yet to see it again, and I hope I never do, or at least there is some explanation for it. Story 6. When I was in uni, I lived by myself. It was a nice little studio unit behind a house in a fairly decent area. I would honestly think nothing of walking places at night. There was a 24-hour McDonald's and a 7-Eleven that I would walk to, often between 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. since I was a massive night owl. Well, one day after finishing an essay at about 2 in the morning, I decided I was hungry but didn't really have anything easy to cook, so I decided to walk down to the 7-Eleven and grab a pie or something. However, as soon as I opened my door, I was overcome by a suffocating feeling of fear. My heart started pounding. I started shaking. The works. Telling myself that this was ridiculous, I walked out to the street with the intent to still go, but that was as far as I got. I was terrified for no reason that I could understand, but no less intensely despite that. I ran back inside and ate dry cereal. Later the next day, I heard about a group of tipsy guys that were causing havoc down near the intersection at the 7-Eleven. They'd beaten up someone from my uni. Even though I can't explain it, I'm convinced something bad would have happened to me that night if I had ignored that feeling and gone. Anyway, answer. This is really the only type of paranormal type stuff that I believe. It seems like somehow humans are able to perceive sense-relevant situations to them when it comes to extreme emotions situations. So often you'll hear about people experiencing extreme and seemingly random negative emotions at the same time a loved one dies unexpectedly, or other things like that. I'm not really sure what it means, but I feel like stuff like this is the last thread of hope that I have, that just maybe passing isn't as boring frightening as, well, you're just dead, and that's it. Granted, I still rationally believe it's like that. But situations like this are very interesting to me, since I can't quite realize how we'd be able to sense things like this in others that we care about, or situations that would be relevant to us, especially across vast distances. Story 7. Probably too late, but better late than never. So much weird stuff like this has happened to my family over the years, particularly with my mom. Below are a couple fan favorites. 1. My parents had been married for maybe a month. They were in bed sound asleep when all of a sudden my mom jumps up and wakes up my dad. "Jimmy, Jimmy, there's blood everywhere. We have to help them. Please." My dad tried his best to calm her down and figure out what she was talking about. My mom had explained that she saw a car with a German license plate on the side of the road, that there had been an accident, and they needed help. My dad tried to console her, to explain that it was all just a bad dream, but she wasn't having it. So to appease her, they got in the car and drove to the spot my mom thought the accident was. And sure enough, at the exact spot my mom said, there was a car on the side of the road with German plates and emergency flashers on. Upon closer investigation, there was nobody in the car. If they needed help, help had already come. 2. My parents had just had their first child, my oldest sister, Kathy. They had been living in Italy at the time, my dad was in the Air Force, and had brought her back to the U.S. to introduce her to the grandparents, my dad's parents. So their first night there, my mom was asleep in the front bedroom, jet-lagged. My dad had gone out to hang out with his brothers, and in the middle of the night, this woman walks into my mom's room, waking her up. She sits down on the bed and says, "Shh, it's okay. I just wanted to welcome you to the family." My mom was scared, obviously, but figured this was some relative or family friend or something that came over. The woman walks over to the bassinet where my baby sister was sleeping. "Is this your daughter?" My mom nodded. "She's beautiful. It's lovely to meet you both." And then she leaves. My mom wakes up the next day and is having breakfast with my grandmother when she brings it up. Who was the woman that came over last night? My grandmother had no idea what she was talking about. My mom told her the whole story, and my grandmother asked what she looked like. My mom said she was tall, had long white hair, and was wearing a blue dress. My grandmother's face went as white as a sheet. She rummaged through some old pictures and pulled one out. "Is this her?" she asked my mom, who nodded in return. "That's my mother. She's been dead for 20 years, and we buried her in a blue dress." Story 8. Probably too late, but here goes. I was working at a hotel in Albuquerque, the graveyard shift. I had been talking to the security guard, and he asked if he could get a ride home. So instead of waiting for 30 minutes for my shift to end, I just left and left a note for my boss that said I left early because my brother was stranded outside of town and needed me to get him. Total lie on my part, but I needed a good excuse to leave early. I drop off the security guard at his place, then go home and go to sleep. A couple of hours of sleep, and I wake up to my phone ringing. It was my brother, he tells. He puts his phone up to my ear and plays a message that he got when he woke up that morning. It's a voice that kinda sounded computerized, but mostly just creepy sounding. It says, "Your stuck freaked us both out. Never figured out where the call came from. Strangest, creepiest thing that's ever happened to me in my life." Story 9. In my childhood home, I would often hear touch typing coming from the computer downstairs early in the mornings. I didn't think much of it at first. My parents worked from home, and it wouldn't be uncommon to wake up in the morning to hear Mum typing away at the computer. One day I got up and called out to Mum, assuming she was down there working as I could hear typing. No answer. No one was down there at all. I was sure I heard typing. This began happening regularly. I figured I was so used to hearing typing from downstairs that I was hearing things that weren't there, so I didn't mention anything to anyone, figuring I was going a bit crazy. This happened on and off over a period of 6 months. The sound of fast typing and fast, furious clicking of a mouse, as if someone was frustrated. One morning I was eating my breakfast when I heard Mum at the top of the stairs call out to me, "You're not down there on that computer already?" I froze and ran out to her. I was amazed she had heard it too. She was convinced she could hear typing, yet no one was down there. I told her about all the times I'd been hearing it, and then my sister opened up about hearing it regularly too when no one was down there. I wasn't crazy after all. I set out to try catch whatever was causing it and to try discover a rational explanation for it. I'd sprint out of my bedroom to the top of the stairs where I was able to look down into the room to see if anyone was at the computer. No such luck. Every time I got there, it stopped. I think it went on for a couple of years, and we learned just to kind of live with it, as it wasn't every day. I was down there once when the ceiling light globe in the center of the room began flashing very fast, strobe-like. It then exploded and glass went shattering all across the room. I was lucky I ran out of the room when it started happening because I was scared. The whole mysterious typing, you know. If I hadn't ran, I would have been hit with bits of light bulb. Around that same time, I was on the computer at home by myself when something happened that resulted in me never being alone in that room again. I felt and heard this really sharp intake of breath directly behind my right shoulder near my ear. I've never ran so fast in my life and was hesitant going in that room ever again. Prior to that, the whole typing thing had just been something weird and bit spooky, not scary. Still makes my heart race when I think about it today. Have never really encountered anything like this before or since all those events. I don't particularly believe ghosts either, but I'm open to the possibilities of something in which scientists don't have a proper explanation for yet. TLDR Ghost was a proficient touch typer who had a breathing problem. Story 10. I'm a little late, but screw it. I was in first grade, hanging out at recess with a friend. He was shooting some hoops outside, and I was playing DS, sitting on the pavement. I remember him asking me if he could make a shot from halfway across the court. I told him he could try, but he probably wouldn't make it while looking at my DS. Suddenly, my dad asks me what I mean. And when I look up, I'm sitting on my living room carpet, talking to my dad, and it's dark out. I was sitting in the same position, playing the same game, same level, and same exact spot in the level. Everything continued normally that night, and I didn't tell anyone at the time, but looking back, it is really freaky. I thought it was a dream for the longest time, but thinking about it, it didn't really feel like a dream. And I don't really remember dreams that well. TLDR. Teleported through space and time once. Story 11. Pretty sure I lived in a haunted house for a while. Strange things. For one, I always felt like I was being watched in my room, and if I had the door open to the hallway, I would swear I'd see someone walk by out of the corner of my eye. We had 2 cats, and someone's they'd be in my room sleeping, and then all of a sudden they would sit bolt up and stare at the door, and nothing I did could move them for a long time. This happened often. One day in my bathroom, the shelf that had my sister's beauty stuff randomly lose hold of all of the items. The thing was, the shelf wasn't loose or hanging and all. Mom and sister used to yell at me for sneaking around the house. Only I wasn't home or I was in my room. They said they saw a man in shadows that was about my height. One day, we also ran into the old owner, and my mom casually asked the lady if she had ever experienced anything in the house. The lady started crying and said no one believed her. But yes, she experienced a lot of stuff. I moved out around that time. I do not miss that place. Story 12. In 2002, I lived in the East SF Bay Area with my husband and 2 toddlers. I was grieving over the sudden passing of my mother a month before. She'd had a major heart attack and died 52 years of age. On an average day, I left my babies at home with my husband to run a quick errand by myself. I drove a block over through downtown Hayward to hit up the grocery store. I was on my way home and stopped at a red light waiting to make a left turn. The intersection had all blind corners, so it was difficult to see oncoming cars. My light turned green. I glanced both ways, waited the appropriate second, and stepped on the gas pedal. It would not move. I tried again. Nothing. The car behind me honked. I looked down under my pedals quickly to see if something had possibly rolled under the pedal and found nothing. I looked up and suddenly a huge work truck loaded down with equipment ran his red light at what must have been 50 miles. I was stunned. I gasped, quickly pulled myself together, stepped on the gas pedal, and it worked with no hesitation. Suddenly, I smelled my mother's favorite perfume. Really amazing experience. Story 13. There was a small door that led to attic space in my bedroom, 11 years old to 13, and it became habit that I would shut the door as I walked into my bedroom a couple times a week. I didn't think anything of it, just assumed my mom didn't close it all the way when she left it. Asked my brother. Nope. Asked my father. Nope. So then I started to pay really close attention to it, making sure it was closed in the morning, checking it after school, checking blaster dinner. Then head up to bed and open. After a couple months of wondering, studying, experimenting, I thought I'd see what happens if I just don't shut it. Opened the door before school and checked it after school. Still oohin'. Checked it after dinner. Still open. Before bed. Still open. Now I'm laying in bed, mind going crazy with the open door across the room. Decide to check it out, so I roll over and focus on the black space into the attic to see a face staring back at me. Bolt downstairs, wake parents, get ridiculed by brother, switch bedrooms, W brother. Move into new house about 6 months later, due to expanding household. New physics teacher and his wife bought our house. I could have forgotten all about that event and chalked it up to me having an overactive mind. But then my senior year I discovered how awesome our physics teacher was. Became my favorite class and by far my favorite teacher. End of senior year, my friend and I took our VHS camcorder around town, doing mostly silly things. But then took it to my old house to see what they've done with the place. We got a very fun tour. I got to tell stories about all the projects my dad did that were still part of the house. Then the wife leads us upstairs to show us the sewing room. I ask, jokingly, "Notice anything strange in this room?" And her face goes blank. On camera, she asks what I mean, and I try to shrug it off, but end up saying something about the attic door. She confirmed that every time she comes up to sew, the attic door is open. She then tells us that the second day of being in the house, their dog, German Shepherd, had gone into the room but would not go back downstairs. He started barking and could not be consoled, and then jumped through the window, landing on the tin roof over the porch, and then running off. The dog did not come back until the next day and has not stepped foot into the hallway that leads upstairs since. I had the initial thought that I could show my parents and brother the story I had on film, but I decided to just let it be. Edit a few extra details to satisfy the curious. Attic is the space in this house that runs parallel, like a Cape Cod, to the second floor, not above it. I was 11 and 12 when this was going on, so I did not immediately science it all out. When I told my family that I saw a face, It was just my brother that ridiculed me. My father definitely would have checked it out for actual humans, because one of the first comments he made was about a family that recently had a coin collection stolen from their house across the street. This event itself was easy to shrug off because I could chalk it up to a lot of other possibilities, like the ones mentioned below. It wasn't until 5 years later that it became freaky. The look on the wife's face before she told us about the dog was very telling, like something they decided to never put much thought into. Now my story added depth to their experience, and their story added depth to mine. This did not make me a believer in paranormal. I told the story as a collection of details, not as a confirmation of ghosts. What it did do was make me never be able to be a non-believer. Thanks for reading. Edit 2. I thought the Blaster Dinner comment was a Reddit reference that was over my head, like most of them. But just reread my story. Nice. Edit 3. Last details. The face was expressionless. I did not see a body, just what appeared to be a dimly lit face staring at me. The door was an actual door, just smaller, with a knob that has to be turned in order to open the door. I do not have the VHS tape from 20-something years ago. I moved a lot after high school, and the tapes did not make it through all the moves. Happy Halloween, everyone.